don't compromise. There is a perfect life in your head, and you truly deserve that. If you have to compromise, it's because you either didn't put enough effort, you decided not to be disciplined about it, or you just didn't believe in yourself enough. And those are not the ways, because you have one life, you are in it right now. Do not compromise.
Life has changed for you in the past few years, and let's talk about your life. And you tweeted last month. You tweeted this out, and you said you truly think women are lucky to be the gender that carries and births babies. What an experience to live through. So I wanted to hear all about your experience. Right now, you're on baby number 2. Congratulations!
Thank you. That's been true magic, true miracle to live through. And I can't help but thinking, like, my husband should be jealous because I'm the one carrying those children. I'm the one living through this crazy, miraculous experience that is pregnancy itself, but birth, oh my God, the labor and the birth of a child is the most magical thing you can live through in your life. Like, I would never be able to say no to this experience. And honestly, I don't know how I'm gonna stop living through this experience because it's just really cool.
I've never been pregnant, and I don't have enough exposure to pregnant women, so that limits my understanding of the whole experience. What are some of the things that you specifically love about this experience?
The hormonal changes that happened in me, I'm really thankful for those. But because, again, after my survival, immigration experiences, and professional athletic career, I might have been a little on the masculine side. That was not really true to myself. That was just the outcome of my experiences. So the pregnancy really showed me the other side of me and how much softer and more caring I can be. Then, I mean, labor itself, it's some weird magic that happens to your body. Like, yes, it is painful, which you don't remember the next day. It is difficult, which you don't remember the next day. You just feel like muscle pain, like after a huge workout. But the next day, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this experience has ended, and the next one might be like years ahead of me. Like, I'll have to wait so long to live through this again. And in this pregnancy, like, every day I remind myself, when you go into labor, just remember to enjoy every minute of it, because this is so short and this is so powerful. If you waste your time on thinking how much something hurts or how uncomfortable you are in the moment, like, you're gonna miss out on this miracle again.
You had plans to have your second kids by 30, which you're very much on schedule. So you've always wanted to become a mom?
Yeah, growing up in Russia, I didn't really question it because everybody has kids. Like, there's no child-free culture. Kids are not seen as an expense, which they kind of are in the US. That's like, people in Idiocracy, the first scene of Idiocracy is two successful double income, no kids people talking how they're trying to time the market to have the kids. And that's a very funny concept that is true in the US. Like, you can see how they plan their career for the child. Yeah. In Russia, it wasn't the thing. When I moved to the US, and I was like, wait a second, nobody my age has kids. Because at 21, that's when you graduate college, 22, and as a woman, that's when you have your first child usually, or when you get married. I moved to the US, and I'm like, wait a second, nobody expects me to have kids here. Nobody asks me about it. Maybe I won't have them. And I thought that for maybe 6 to 8 months, and I was like, oh no, no, I'm definitely going to have kids. So I didn't really question that. And again, I was such a happy child, and I saw my mom being such a happy mother and my dad being such a happy dad, and how we as a family had beautiful experiences, just really enjoying our time together. So I never seen it as a pain or a struggle. So I thought it would be my experience too, and it is.
Was there anything that you didn't like about pregnancy, or everything was just pure magic?
Yes. No, there are a lot of things that you...
I would be surprised if you didn't mention a thing.
No, I mean, it's difficult. No question there. It's not easy. In the first trimester, again, you're in a state of survival. The way I would describe first trimester is you're in a true state of depression, but you understand it's because of this miracle that is happening, so you're cool with that. And
Okay.
you know it's temporary. So it's a temporary state of depression for like 2 months that you just deal with that because you know it's for the greater cause. But you basically don't feel good all the time. Like you feel unwell. Something is not right. Like you don't like the food you usually like. You wanna nap every day basically. And funny thing is, in the first trimester, you really don't want to be an entrepreneur. You just want to quit your business. Like the meme in my head, you know, where the guy's like flipping the table.
How has being a mom changed you?
Priorities, for sure. My priorities got way more straight in terms of like I could compromise here and there. Maybe make the wrong choice because I could deal with the consequences. Like, stupid example. By the way, I never tried alcohol in my life, so I don't drink, but I think it's a good example. Like, people go and they drink a little too much and they deal with the consequences the next day. They're hangover, they're sleeping in, the day's wasted. You can never do that as a parent. And I see a lot of like moms and dads just becoming so much more healthy because they kind of have to, because if you don't have the energy to be the parent, like your life gets so much harder. So you prioritize the healthy lifestyle, you get a better routine. I don't remember the last time where I wasn't in bed by 10:30 p.m. Maybe at Miami Bitcoin conference. That's probably it. So you prioritize the right routine, and the whole low time preference just becomes even more disciplined in your head. And it's not even thinking, it's not even conscious. You just have to. It kind of like you're in a way, you optimizing for longevity, you're optimizing for the most energy outcome for the next day. It's like you always optimizing for the future because you see this future growing in front of your eyes. So that's really the biggest change probably.
Have the experience of being a mom surprised you in any way? Like anything that you grew up thinking, oh, this is what it's like to be a mom, and then when you are actually in that position, that's not the case?
In some ways, it's easier than I expected, I would say. So honestly, my understanding of motherhood was pretty much on point. What I wasn't sure if I would be able to do, and like it took me 2 years to realize that, like, I had principles in my head that I thought I would live through as a mother, but I couldn't talk about them yet because I wasn't sure if I would stick with my principles out of the hardness and toughness of being a mom. And now 2 years in, I'm realizing, no, like my principles stayed in place. I still believe what I believe. Like, for example, the whole homeschooling thing, I thought it would be really hard. I thought I would give up. And now, like, obviously I'm not schooling my child on physics yet. Like, he's not even 2 years old. But I realized that they're just a sponge that is acquiring information from everything. And all I have to do is like read books, or basically like I'm just talking through what I'm doing in life on a minute basis, like let's make coffee, let's clean the room. And he just acquires all this knowledge, and it's so much easier to homeschool a child than I thought it would be. So I think I'm like entering the confidence level that I will be able to live with all the principles that I thought I had in my motherhood life. So I'm going to start talking more about it on social media and like be more open about what I believe should be done as a parent.
You mentioned homeschooling in some of your posts, and it's a concept I'm seeing starting to take popularity, especially among Bitcoiners, and there are people actively doing it and talking about it. But I imagine some major difference to homeschool a 2-year-old to a 12-year-old. What is your plan? I know it's still 10 years ahead. First, so what is the rationale behind homeschooling?
I think the current system, like the public education, is optimized for two-parents household working 40 plus hours a week. So they need the child to be somewhere taken care of. So they have this school system that wastes a lot of child time and potential while also turning them into an obedient member of society. So I don't think it's in the best interest of my child or the society to have this public education. And like, it is the simpler and easier way for sure. And again, the low time preference teaching me that like, yes, it might take some of my effort. It might take more funds, like as an investment, but that's what I'm consciously choosing for my child. And I think you would be interested in hearing this too. Same goes for birth and labor. Like a lot of Bitcoiners mom, opt out of the system and do unmedicated birth without any painkillers, without the hospital team, just doing it at home, unmedicated. And again, they're optimizing for the future outcomes because in a hospital, there are a lot of interventions that do ensure the safety of your child in the moment, but the doctor is not going to be the one raising this child for the next 20 years. They don't care about the immunity system of your child for the next 20 years. They don't care about the gut health of your child for the next 20 years. They optimize for the fact that tomorrow you're going to leave this hospital with a baby that is not dead.
Yeah.
And like, this is not what, as a parent, I mean, obviously you want your child healthy. You want your child alive, but you want him healthy for the next lifetime. And that's what you have to consider too. And that's what doctors don't have to consider. So the Bitcoiners mom that I see, they do try to do unmedicated birth. They do try different system of, like, they all breastfeed basically. Then they all optimize for a different diet when they introduce the child to food. And then they want to homeschool their children, or at least some alternative education methods. And again, homeschooling, like the more I talk to older moms who have older children, like there are cool systems, there are cool alternatives that are not that hard, that you can still have your own time, you can still have a job or a hobby and being able to homeschool, because the education they provide in a public school, you don't need 8 hours in order to obtain all this information. Like, I remember the majority of the time was disciplining us so we can sit on the stupid tables and then choose the right book and then who's going to read next. And it's like so much wasted time when, again, I didn't go much to school. I only went to school maybe 4 months out of a year at best. And I was able to graduate with like mostly A's. Because, again, you don't need that much time in school in order to obtain the information.
Do you have any of the specific of how the traditional method of laboring in hospital, like what they do to that are super high time preference?
I mean, C-section has skyrocketed in the last 40 years. And C-section itself, like, it's a great tool that we discovered for those who are truly struggling through labor and cannot, like, a lot of mothers used to die during labor because C-section didn't exist. It is a necessary tool to have. It is great that we have it, but it is so overutilized in the current world. Just like antibiotics, for example. Great tool that we discovered, but so overutilized that is killing gut bacteria for people. So same goes with C-section. It is very important experience for a mother's body and for child body to go through the birth canal, to go through the labor experience, for a child's immunity, for a mother's hormonal response, including like future breastfeeding, etc. When you go through C-section, your body's being tricked, like your body doesn't really know that you went through labor. It is a completely different experience. So now you somehow have to tell your body, hey, you had the child. You need to start breastfeeding. You need to start going through the postpartum hormonal spikes, which your body doesn't know. Your body just, all it felt is it was cut in the middle of the belly, and that's about it. So now we see a lot of postpartum depression skyrocketing too, because again, your body didn't live through the natural, like the nature is smarter than us. We cannot lie to our body and expect it to perform the same way. And then it's also harder to have more children if you have C-section. Then there are a lot of extra funny things, how they give your child a lot of vaccines, like for example, the vaginally transmitted disease, like hepatitis vaccine that they give to your child at the age of few hours. And you're like, I don't think my child is gonna have a sexual intercourse, anytime soon. I don't need you. I don't think you have to give him this little illness right now in order to fight future. So yeah, a lot of questionable interventions that are happening in the hospital, just due to the different decision making, different thinking process for the doctor versus parent.
Wow. It's a lot to think about. And I feel like when you become a parent, this is when you really have to put your foot down in terms of your value. Like, where do you stand? Because you have to actually make these decisions for your children, who you probably love the most in the world and want the best for them.
So I was planning for my first child, I was planning a home birth, but then I woke up at 34 weeks pregnant, which is 6 weeks until the full term. And I was in labor out of blue. So I had to go into hospital because the child was a little too young to be born at home. And we had to fight. Like, we were still lucky because our hospital is like somewhat freedom-minded. Yeah. But we had to fight for not getting myself steroids. That's what they wanted to give me and the child. They wanted to give us antibiotics because they didn't know what caused it. So they thought it might have been some kind of infection. Which 24 hours later, the results of the blood work came back and the doctor said, okay, it was the right call, parents. Congratulations, you did the right thing. But 24 hours before that, this doctor literally walked into our room 3 times in the matter of 3 hours and said, your child may die if you don't give him antibiotics. And we're like, you're literally telling me how can you even tell this to anybody? Well, you might be making the decision that your child is going to die. And I'm like, okay, give me the numbers. Like, give me statistics. And she's like, well, the chance is 0.02%. And I'm like, are you telling it to every parent with this much? I was so pissed. But imagine you're in this vulnerable state. You just went through a crazy experience of going into labor early, 36 hours of laboring a child. You you can't think properly. You just tripped on the biggest trip of your life. And they're giving you all this fake information just to manipulate your decision. And now you have to stand and advocate for yourself. It's really hard. So yeah, if your values are not straight at this point, you're probably going to stick with their plan. And that's why marrying a Bitcoiner was such a blessing, because we might have not talked through every potential scenario for my labor with my husband, but because we're so aligned philosophically, there was no question on a single issue between the two of us. We stood together as two parents who are exactly on the same page regarding all the decision making for our child. And that was a very powerful experience for us as a couple, to just realizing how blessed we are to have found each other and to just live together as a truly philosophically aligned couple. That was really cool.
That's such a blessing, because imagine having that conversation if you should take the doctor's advice when you're in labor and in that scenario, and you have to have that conversation with your partner. If he's disagreeing with you, then it's gonna be a shit show, honestly. And honestly, this speaks so much about your strengths, because doctors, they're supposed to be the professionals. Like, they're supposed to be the ones who help people, and they have the expertise and knowledge in science to properly help people navigate through the situation. And to say something like your child might die if you don't take this, that's a very strong argument. And the fact that you didn't really kind of cave into that and fought through at such critical state and with so much at stake, that's definitely a experience to live through. And let's take a step back then, because you're talking about partner, and before you become a mom, you become a wife, right? And I guess for my case, like, I want children. I've always, I get along with them. I like spending time with them. And that's been my case growing up. But my biggest fear here is I'm very much afraid of doing it with the wrong person.
It should be.
Yeah. I know I should be.
My mom always said, remember, when you're choosing your partner, remember you're also choosing the father for your children. And like, those two go hand in hand, and choosing the right partner is so important, because it's honestly the biggest decision of my life. Like, that's the most important decision in your life. Like, you take this turn, you cannot go back.
Yeah.
Like, it's huge. And before meeting my husband, a week before that, I went into counseling with a therapist, and I spent 2 hours outlining exactly what I wanted in my partner.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Stupid details. Like, I'm telling you, like, small details that I would never even think about, but she forced me to think about every lifestyle choice he makes, every like career choice he makes, what kind of family he's coming from. We talked through everything. 2 hours of completely outlining my partner. So when I did meet him, there was no hesitation. Like, I knew very soon that, like, that's it. Probably a month in, I knew that that's my husband.
Because he was so aligned with what you're looking for?
Exactly. He was the portrait that I had in my head on all the life decisions, knowledge, information, skills, and like life future imagination. Like, we seen the future exactly the same way, and we wanted to achieve it the same way. So yeah, that was very clear to me.
Lucky you. What I have to say. So what are the things you were looking for?
My first thing I would say, well, he must be good at math. For some reason, ever since I was a child, my husband had to be good at math. And that kind of turned into, he's probably an engineer.
Yeah.
So for some reason, I knew that my husband was an engineer. Then I really wanted him to be from a full family, that his parents are still together, because he has this role model of loving parents and loving couple where divorce is not an option. I really wanted that. I wanted him to have siblings, because I think if he's from a bigger family, he will want a bigger family. I wanted him to make very conscious choices regarding his health. Like, I wanted him to be healthy and good on a fitness level, because that's what strong partner is for me. I wanted him to be ambitious, but also not money hungry for the sake of having money, but more for the sake of having freedom. Those were like important things to me. And then, yeah, it's funny how we met. Like 3 months before that, I was in Mexico with my friend Ben de Carmen, who is a core contributor. And I was like, Ben de Carmen, you must know my husband, because he's an engineer. You hang out with all the engineers. Find me my husband. And he actually went through his whole following list on Twitter to try and find me a husband. 2 months later, a friend of mine is looking for a CTO for her company. And I'm like, hey, Ben de Carmen, can you find a CTO for this company? He's like, well, try to reach out to this guy.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him on Twitter. I slid into his DMs saying that my friend is hiring.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm not looking for a job. I'm like, but you know,
I'm looking for a wife.
So ambitious. And yeah, I jumped on a Zoom call with him trying to convince him to work for my friend who's hiring. And he's like, well, good luck to you, but I'm really focused on Bitcoin right now. I'm not looking for a job at the time. And I didn't realize that he was good looking at the time. I completely didn't think about it whatsoever. Right. And then 3 weeks later, I come to Austin for BitDevs, just for a meetup. And I walk into BitDevs with the friend who was hiring. And I'm like, this is the dude we were trying to hire. He's a hottie. And on this BitDevs, we talked a little. And the next day there was a barbecue and he asked me out. And a little over a year later, we had a child.
Oh, wow. Lucky him as well, because basically he just had a wife slap into his, fall on his lap, slide into his DMs, right? How convenient.
Truly. Seriously.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted, when he asked me out, I said, well, we're on different timelines. I'm getting married and having children next year, and you're very young. He was only 2 years older than me. I was 25 and he was 27. Mm-hmm. So I wanted a person who's ready to have children next year. And so I told him right away, and he said, well, I'll still take a date. I'm like, okay, I gave you heads up. So he was ready.
Finding the right person is very important, and it's too important to screw up. That's my biggest concern here. It's tricky. How do you even balance? Because it's not up to you. It's not like I can do 10 push-ups a day and then by the end of 100 days, I will have a perfect husband, right? It just doesn't work like that.
That was kind of my approach.
What?
It kind of was.
Okay.
It really was.
Walk me through.
So during the COVID, I really spent my time trying to better myself in any way I can to become the wife of the husband of my dream. So I was getting healthier, getting educated, getting my life in place where I'm proud of where I am, and I'm a solid wife possibility for anybody, basically.
What is a solid wife possibility? What goes into the mix?
Specifically for my perfect husband, not for anybody,
yeah,
obviously.
Of course.
So what they care about is healthy, fertile, not in debt, has a job that she enjoys, not depressed, a happy woman who is ready to become a happy wife and happy mother, basically. So that's what I was becoming at the time. And I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to meet my husband. And I was living in Mexico, and I absolutely could not see myself finding a husband there because of all the drama that I see. It's a stereotype that I have confirmed for myself when I lived there. So I moved back to the US and I met my husband 3 weeks later. So maybe I didn't have to move. But basically, I outlined exactly what I want from my husband. And then I started putting myself in the position where I could potentially meet this person, because you can visualize your husband and think about it all you want, and then sit at home and swipe Twitter all day long, which may still work out, as we know.
Apparently.
But yeah, most likely not. So I was looking for what are the places that the potential husband of mine is going to, and those were meetups, basically tech meetups, because he was an engineer. All the Bitcoin hangouts. I made it very clear to all my Bitcoiner friends that I am looking for a husband, in fact, and you all better help me.
Maybe I should take the same approach, actually.
Yeah, because all you have to do is be the wife that you think your husband would want, and put yourself in a position where you can potentially meet him. And that's it. And BitDevs in Austin worked out for me. I see a lot of mutual friends who met their person through Bitcoin or Bitcoin meetups too. So that's been working out, or through introductions by Bitcoiners. That's been working out well too. Yeah, and my husband once told me, he's like, I'm a little concerned about all the traveling that you do, because I traveled way too much, 60, 70 flights a year. And he said, I'm a little concerned about all the traveling you do, but I think it's because you were looking for a man. And at the time I was like, absolutely not. I was traveling for Bitcoin. I was traveling for pleasure. But in my subconscious, I was like, how does he know? Yeah. that was probably on point.
Yeah. I totally relate to that because, things don't just happen. And if you want something, you have to be strategic about it, and you have to actively go after it. It's very rare that the wife just slide into your DM and one thing led to another, right? And for the majority of us, we're like not as fortunate. You need to actually go out there and meet people and connect from there. The hardest part is to know what you want. And this is what I've realized as well. And it doesn't just apply to a relationship. It's about career, about family, and all aspects of your life. I think like the hardest part is really to put fingers and be very specific and articulate about what you want. Because if you don't know what you want, how are you going to find it? You have an atlas of what you're looking for. So when you see that person, the realization happens very, very quickly. So I think it's a combination of things. You first need to know where you're going, and then be strategic about it to think about how do you get there, right? So it applies to absolutely everything. That's more than, and people think that you only need to do this with your career, but in reality, this is something you also should do in relationship, and make sure people like kind of adopt the same mindset in entrepreneurship, like build in public. You telling your friends like, I'm looking for a husband, and you're like looking in public, right? So when people have someone that they think might be suitable, they're gonna point your way, and you never know. The power of planting seeds it's always very magical. And you talk about homeschool. You have plans to homeschool your children. They're probably a little bit too early to start right now, but how do you like visualize it when they're, let's say, 10, 12 years old? How do you see their day-to-day and your day-to-day? Because years ago, like I wasn't familiar with the concept of homeschooling forever. Like I didn't grow up in that background. I went to public schools, wore uniforms, and it's a very different, like I felt very unhappy growing up because I've always kind of an old duck compared to my peers in the environment I was in. But I didn't know there was other option. And the first time I heard about homeschooling, and I thought it was very hard to implement, and I thought the mom would have to do the majority of it, which is another aspect where I'm kind of in fear for starting a family and having kids, is that I didn't really have a self growing up. I was very much like living under other people's expectations and being a traditional good kid, and I obviously rebelled and left home at 18 years old and had the privilege and the opportunity to really shape myself ever since and be my own person. So I find myself holding on to the self a lot because I didn't have that growing up. So my fear here is I'm so afraid of being in becoming a wife and becoming a mom, and then my identity, myself and who I am will get consumed by the responsibility, by the other aspects of who I am. So help me, what do you have to say?
The motherhood will definitely transform your view of yourself, but you'll find even better yourself in this position, in my opinion. But I definitely understand trying to be the good daughter and like trying to fit into other people's expectations. And school actually puts it on you a lot. Now, if you go to my schooling idea, it is not going to be a homeschooling in the traditional way where you basically pick up a curriculum from your local school and mom just teaches you everything from A to Z and you pass the test at the end of every year. This is not the homeschooling I'm planning on. The hybrid that I'm thinking about is more known as an unschooling, because basically there is no structure to follow other than what you put in place. And what I see a lot is I loved project-based education where I exactly know why I'm learning something and I know how to apply it. So just a couple of small examples. Like, I love geometry, which I still do. But there are different ways to learn geometry. You can learn it by reading textbooks, or you can learn it by building a chicken coop and on your backyard. Or like, I even have this idea when my firstborn son is 12 years old, he's going to start building a house on the backyard, house for himself. He's going to do the full project design. He's going to learn like AutoCAD or whatever the tools are in place at the time. He's going to learn the design. He's going to learn the actual hands-on building. And by the time he's 14, 15, he has his own backyard house to live in if he wants to live on his own, where he can learn how to cook and do whatever. So like, there are all those project-based plans that I have in my head, or like an RV trip around the country where you learn a lot about local geography and history just by actually being there instead of looking at the map. So all these little projects that like I will be able to accomplish because I have a freedom of working remotely, and because Bitcoin is going to make sure that we have the funds to fund all that. Like, that's a great position to be in. I understand that. I understand not everybody can do that, but it doesn't also have to be this way. You just basically have to follow the child's curiosity, because again, they're the sponge that just acquires information from whatever you feed them. And if they're currently interested in the dinosaurs, let's try to learn about dinosaurs. If they're interested in fixing your old car, let's learn about that. And it's amazing how much more you learn when you actually have to apply the knowledge. Like, I spent 2 years in economics and finance school and just have no idea what I learned there. And then when I have to manage my finances, file my taxes, do the company projections and like P&L files, like, okay, I can actually learn that, apply that, and it stays in my head forever, not just until the exam is over. So I just want to apply the same thing to my children. And there will definitely be sit down and learn from textbooks here and there. I'm not against that at all. It just doesn't have to be spread out for 8 hours a day. It can be consumed to like 40 minutes of math a day, 40 minutes of different languages. I also want them to learn music and definitely learn their body really well through like gymnastics, boxing, whatever sport they like at the time. Just expose them to as many things as I can and see what sticks in a way, because we all are different. And like, I really stick with sports at the time and my sister really didn't. So
everyone's different.
Things that we want. Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be about trial and error in a way. And I definitely see this huge flaw in traditional education system is that there's so many kids having good grades and they do well in life, but lack a basic level of common sense, and they're terrible at taking care of themselves. Materially successful, but they have very low emotional intelligence. They don't know how to interact with people. They crave intimacy but don't know how to approach that, and have their. But these people, because of that contrast, and even more so with that contrast, they're going to form some like seriously dark thoughts and dark corners in their souls, and that's hugely no parents want to see their kids to be in that position if they realize the actual impact. So I definitely see the urgency here. Do you have enough time, especially with baby number 2 that's coming, like in the future? How do you see yourself balancing, and how do you see your husband as well, like balancing your personal life, professional life, and the vital roles you play in your family?
Yeah, the definition of the roles is definitely something that you have to communicate very clearly with your husband, because that's basically both of you have certain expectations on the parenting style and the parenting efforts for each of you. And then if you don't communicate it clearly, that's where a lot of disagreements will come from. We do have a lot of help. So my in-laws are very hands-on, and they're moving to our town very soon. So I'm super excited about that. I also do have a nanny that comes in for like 5 hours a day, usually during the work time. So I can jump on a podcast like that and get my work done in the morning. And then also children sleep so much. I did not realize that I did not need at all maternity leave with my first child, because he was just sleeping all the time. All I had to do is breastfeed him here and there. And like, I had so much time on my hands the first few months of being a mom. I did not realize I would have that. Like, I had things in place to like completely take care of the business if I'm not able to attend. And here I was taking all the clients' calls because I had all the time in the world and all the energy too, thankfully. So again, I have flexibility because I'm a business owner, and I have a very good team. And now, like, building through the bear market, I can clearly see how my team grew in a way that, like, how much more professional they've become, how much better of communication methods we established, how the processes are so brushed up now, so we will be able to scale a lot without feeling the pressure from the bull market. So we are really ready for that. And you know how you mentioned that like children are not ready, like they're not ready to take the next steps in life, because like we basically throw them throughout the school. They're completely taking care of their mom. They're being cooked for. They're going to school where the school tells them exactly what to do in order to get an A. Like, they don't have to analyze things. They don't have to be self-reliant, and they don't have to make decisions and analyze the potential future outcomes. And then we throw them into a university where they live on their own. They have completely different like, there's no discipline in place other than what they have to build for themselves. So that's where the first huge downhill happens to many kids, because they're like, okay, I'm on my own. I'm going to go nuts. And then they go to work where now they're not financially taken care of. They're not like emotionally taken care of. There's no clear leader who tells them what to do. And it's like, in a small business, you see how your employees grow. They slowly and steadily take it every step, and you have to lead them through this growth. We have to do the same with children, because we can't just tell them, okay, this is a promotion. Between the previous stage and this stage, we will not teach you anything. There will be no onboarding process. We're just throwing all this huge new list of responsibilities that you figured out. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how do you expect the child to just completely take on a huge new role without any learning curve? You don't. You shouldn't expect that. Mm-hmm. So if we give more responsibility to our children throughout the schooling experience to get them ready for college, and then through college to get them ready for career, to like start exposing them like little by little, instead of this huge dive into a new role, that it's just going to be much nicer of a process without additional stress, with much better outcomes. So yeah, I saw it in my team. We've been doing a lot of growth lately, especially since I found out that I was pregnant. I was like, okay, another time to take a leap in education, in growing as a team, in bettering our processes. So I think we're getting to a really good spot where I'm so confident in my team that I can get out for a second.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great position to be in for sure. And the other question I had for homeschooling is that, is this, at least in the US, right? Like, is it viable to have your kid and have the entire school years homeschooled and go to college? And what's the school system translate?
They will have to take SAT at the end of the school for sure. But they actually realized that colleges want homeschool kids more, seems like, and the homeschooled kids do better at colleges somehow. What a surprise. A lot of parents do that. They will homeschool through elementary and middle school, and then they will send the child to high school for experiences and getting ready to college. So that's very common theme. I do want to do a hybrid where, like, for example, I consider the situation where we go back to Russia for like 6-9 months and take a school year in a traditional Russian school, just so he or she can experience what I lived through back in the day. Also, Russian schools are so cool in the way that you don't have to attend if you don't want to. Like, the parent has a full responsibility for the child. My mom would write a note saying, sorry, Katie needs to go snowboard today, and that would be fine.
That's nice.
And like, I could skip months at a time and show up and take the test and prove them that I learned what I had to learn, and there would be no CPS, Child Protection Services, called on my parents or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because the parent has more weight in the child education. So like, skipping school is not an issue. Having the hybrid system is not an issue. It's like more customizable in my opinion, especially in small towns.
I remember you're in Miami and I think you took your son and then you were still breastfeeding at the time, but your energy level was through the roof. You didn't seem like tired or, you're like barely keeping up. You're not. You're fully enjoying it. Was it because you're an athlete? What was your secret?
I think the overall health is just like, again, I never tried alcohol in my life, so I never poisoned myself. I do eat good food. I do exercise regularly. So maybe my base level energy and I just feel good all the time, most of the time. And I invested effort into becoming that healthy. And then I also, my child sleeps so good. Like, right now he sleeps 12 hours every night from 7:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m.
Nice.
I can get as much sleep as I want and even more. So I'm not this sleep deprived mom by any means. And of course it happened. It was the case here and there. But again, it's so temporary. You forget about it the next month. My
fear level kind of go down. I think it's about me getting exposure to more of women that are already in that position too, because right now it's a myth for me, right? Like, I have very little places to gather information like this. Is like, I understand it's all in my head, but I don't know how to get out of it. And I think ultimately it would take the right person to do it. For sure. You find the cases where people really made it work for themselves and you follow their framework, just like you would do, okay, his investing strategy, whatever, made him wealthy by 35. Maybe I should see what he did right and follow the same footsteps, right? Like, something like this. You do the same with family. Like, I see moms of 6 and I'm like, whoa, I don't know how she did that, but she did and it worked for her. So I'm going to go and ask and just apply her framework or find a similar framework for myself that will work the same way. So the further I go into motherhood, the more I realized you can make everything work for yourself. You just need to find what you're comfortable with and how to achieve this system. Then choosing to avoid it altogether. It's I guess in the end, it's definitely like I'm having so much fun with this podcast, partially also because these conversations I have with people, and because I focus on the human side of Bitcoin and I talk to Bitcoiners, it's such a privilege for me to get exposed to conversations like this and learn from you and other guests about what they've done in their lives that have benefited them, that have tripped them over, for me and my audience to learn. So thanks a lot for this opportunity, and you've been very honest and candid with your answers, so I really do appreciate that. Before we wrap off, can you teach me how to say fix the money, fix the world in Russian? Let me find a good translation. A simpler version. Исправь деньги, исправь мир. Исправь деньги, исправь мир. Booyah! Good enough? Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm impressed by myself, because usually I don't get on the first try. Like, normally I have to learn for 2 minutes and cut out the part when I was learning. So good. Kudos to both of us for that. And thanks a lot for joining, Katie. It's been a great time to connect with you and to have this conversation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Do not compromise on your perfect life out of your fears. Just don't compromise. There is a perfect life in your head and you truly deserve that. If you
if you have to compromise, it's because you either didn't put enough effort, you decided not to be disciplined about it, or you just didn't believe in yourself enough. And those are not the ways, because you have one life, you are in it right now, do not compromise.
Wow. I need this reminder, actually. So thanks for that. Don't compromise. Thank you so much for joining. And what's the best way to keep close to your work?
Twitter, Katie the Russian. And on my Instagram, I decided that I am going public with more of a motherhood content and how I see the motherhood to be a better, easier motherhood than what the system tries to let us believe. So I'm going to be talking more about that on my Instagram, and that is the universe of Katie. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I do like going a little more personal than, again, just talking about business and Bitcoin. I think it was super fun.
Wow, I'm glad. We shall do this again. Happy to be in your universe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Live with Bitcoin. I'm your host, Vivian Chen. If you like this content, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.